Testing, testing, testing for YouTube.
Hello, hoping someone can give me a speaker check, please.
We can hear you.
Thank you.
All right, welcome everyone. We will call to order our Committee of the Whole meeting and start by recognizing that we work, live, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded territories of the Sushot and Hupachesit First Nations. Council, we do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items?
Oh, yes.
Councillor Solda.
You were just waiting for that. I could tell.
For the list.
I've shortened the list since then. So I would like to talk about a quick thing about B&B and the bylaws regarding B&Bs. And do you want me to carry on? The washroom, just an update on the washrooms, if I may, Madam Mayor. The washroom, I should say. And also regarding the garbage across from the Little Bavaria in the burnt out area. And just have a little conversation on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think it's, for the most part, just three kind of quick updates, questions from staff or to staff. Any other items? Okay, and any items from our corporate officer?
Thank you, Chair Minions. Can we please make an agenda amendment to accommodate our consultant for item F2, Council Remuneration and Expenses Bylaw Review, requesting if we can please move that following adoption of minutes.
Thank you. And I'm actually going to suggest that we do it after public input because there's only two people in the audience. I know that we were cognizant of time on that one, but we'll go public input and then item F2 if council is okay with that. And council, it's just that the delegation needs to leave by a certain time. Okay, with that, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the amendments? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we'll go to adoption of minutes. And we have minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting held at 6 p.m. on April 20th, 2026 as presented. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we will go to public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the committee. Up to 6 speakers for up to 5 minutes each can be accommodated. Come on forward. And when you come to the microphone, if you don't mind just introducing yourself with your name and address, please.
Okay, I got it. It is, thank you, yes. Wendy Fletcher, I'm on 5962 River Road, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me because this is something that has bothered me for quite a long time. So I wrote it out because I knew I would forget something. I am here tonight because I am unhappy with the condition of a property on River Road. The neighborhood has many well-maintained properties, lovely neighbors, by the way, and this road is the only access to Ucluelet and Tofino. Every tourist visiting the Alberni Valley on the way to Tofino drives past this property. You might be familiar with it, as it is an ongoing issue. The property I'm referring to has many dilapidated RVs and is always completely covered with garbage. In fact, the garbage seems to grow daily, is never cleaned up, and the debris just accumulates. There is now also a tent where they often have a big bonfire right beside the road, and last week I noticed children sitting there with the adults. I am not sure how many RVs are on the property because they stretch back as further than I can see. As far as I know, there are no washrooms on the property, and people seem to use the empty lot at the corner of Heath and River Road as an outhouse. Just yesterday, I saw 2 people relieving themselves in that lot. With the turnaround, the turnabout issue, now everybody's driving down Heaslip and up Heath, so maybe I'm just more aware of it now. But anyways, that was just in this last couple of days. I don't think that, so I've called bylaw, the RCMP, and also Gord Johns regarding cleaning up the garbage on this property and addressing the sanitary problems. I don't think anyone wants to drive along the beautiful Somas River and constantly see people relieving themselves in a mound of garbage. A few days ago, someone was on my property at 6 a.m. I recently have experienced theft from my backyard. I have been there over 10 years and I've never had any theft on my property before. I have spoken with both the Somas Motel and Nasgard's Farm Market. They have both experienced an uptick in crime in the last year and both have beefed up their security systems. The Somas Motel has had to empty their pool and lock the laundry room. They had to remove someone loitering on their property a few days ago.
and neighbors I have spoken with in the area also report noticing more crime and theft from their properties. I have phoned the RCMP non-emergency line and asked them to increase patrols along Heaslip Road, Heath Road, and River Road to curb the crime problem and address the public urination outhouse issue. I honestly never see a police car. I work in my yard all the time. I rarely ever see a police car out that way. For Port Alberni residents who are proud of and maintain their property, and for business owners in the area, I believe we would all appreciate any effort to clean up this area. Anyone in the tourism business surely recognizes that tourists driving past a property like this will not want to stop and spend money and time in Port Alberni. Port Alberni has so many gorgeous spots, beautiful trails, stunning waterfalls, and lovely scenery, and as I mentioned before, lovely people. Do we want the last vision of Port Alberni that people see when driving through to be a property covered in garbage and someone using a tree as an outhouse? Is it fair to the people who maintain their homes on River Road to have a neighbor who clearly doesn't care about the garbage, rats, and sanitation? I've asked Bylaw, the RCMP, and Gord Johns to address this issue, and still the property grows worse every day. So I am coming to council to see if there is anything that you can do. I hope someone somewhere can help clean up this mess, establish some sort of weekly garbage pickup, and address the sanitation issue. I am asking the city to step in and address this ongoing issue. And I really appreciate you listening to me because it, as I say, it has really bothered me for quite a long time. So, and thank you to the councillors that have taken the time to speak with me in the last couple of days. I really appreciate that as well.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate you coming forward and with this issue, and the fact that you've also reached out to Bylaw, RCMP, and others as well along the way. Because council doesn't have a full understanding of the issue right now and what has been done, I think I'll just ask our staff to get back to us as a starting point with an update on where it's at, what has been tried. I'm not actually sure if that property is within the city of Port Alberni limits or not. And if it's not, then there, is another option for us to start with communication with the nation so that we can try to make an improvement there. So really appreciate, I have driven by and thought the exact same thing. So really appreciate that you have reached out on this. We will kind of get an idea of what's happened so far, and then we will, council will decide what next steps are potentially, but I'm happy to connect with the local nation on it as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks for coming today. Mr. Kannegeezer, would you like to speak?
Good evening. Over the past several months, council's wrestled with the problem about property use in zoning, and I'm sure it's been a real issue for council to deal with that, and no easy solutions. But I want to draw your attention tonight to some other issues related to that. The city works yard on 6th Avenue is an M1 zoning. If I read the description of M1 zoning, welding is not permitted. Yet I'm told by your city staff that welding does in fact occur in there by the mechanics. Don't have a certified welder per se, but you have mechanics who do welding in conjunction with their trade qualifications. So I guess the question would be to council is, it must be difficult for you to look those business people that you turned down their temporary use permits and you approved one permit and denied another across the street from each other. It must be difficult to look them in the eye and say, I'm sorry that's not good for you, but we'll carry on our property as we wish. Very interesting situation you've got yourselves into. So months ago, Councillor Patola spoke very eloquently about the pitfalls and the traps and the quagmires, as I remember the word, that council was getting themselves into in this matter of zoning. So I'd just like to hear a response from council is how do they plan to deal with the fact that welding is occurring inside a zone that's owned by the city?
Thanks, Mr. Kanagizer. I'm going to just quickly ask our director to give us an update on if he knows, and if not, Scott, you're welcome to get back to us about the zoning there and if what's happening is permitted or not.
Okay, so I would certainly confirm things, but I believe Workshard is a permitted use in our M1 light industrial zone. And in my opinion, an ancillary use to a city workshard would a certain level of welding, amongst other types of uses, would be considered as an anticipated use of a wider public workshard. So therefore, I would say, just based, without looking into any details, that that's how it would be considered a permitted use as a city workshard, and that welding and other types of heavy work would be considered part of that wider general use.
Thanks very much for that. And Mr. Kanagizer, thanks for bringing that forward. If there is an issue, our staff will look into it and could bring to us a request to make an amendment to the bylaw.
I'll just add, if I may, that it's interesting in the M2 zone, which is medium industry, I think, in the permitted uses specifically says welding and blacksmithing, but it's not in the M1 zone. And if you just look a little further down the street on 6th Avenue, there's a business operating there, been operating for many years at the corner of Roger and 6th, and is it Cedarwood? Advertised as a welding shop. That's in an M1 zone. A welding shop in an M1 zone where it's not allowed. So, be interested in your conversation you have with the people who own the 2 trailer courts and say, well, a recreational vehicle's not allowed, or a trailer not allowed on here, or I'm sorry, you can't have a warehouse in this building. I mean, it must be a real challenge for you to do so. So I'll just leave it at that. The second question I have, or comment I have, is in about 3.5 months or something like that, you'll be starting the reconstruction of Argyle from 3rd down to Kingsway, and including much needed and appropriate water, sewer, storm sewer, those kind of things are great. But I understand from the media that you'd be doing some changes to the intersections of bump outs and parallel parking and that kind of stuff. So my question is, have you thought about that in the light of the reconstruction you did on Bird Avenue, or Bird Street? As how well did those bump outs, those bicycle lanes, and that kind of thing, how well has that worked for the community? Is there anything we can learn from the development of Bird Street and apply it to make the project on Argyle even better? For example, on Bird Street, because I live in the area, you've eliminated the parking along Bird in front of the apartments, which has forced the parking on Anderson Avenue, which is narrow. And I would like to have a conversation with the fire chief and the ambulance services as to how they feel of driving their heavy vehicles down the narrow Anderson Avenue to get to the various other buildings there, including where I live at Timberline. When there's parking on both sides, you know, it's a congested area. Is there something we could learn from that to apply to the Bird Street development? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Kanagizer. Appreciate that input, and thanks for speaking today. We will go to our delegation, or sorry, not delegation, item F2, our staff report, council remuneration and expense bylaw review. And Andrew? Thank you.
Madam Mayor, what we'll do is we'll have Julie Case speak first on the report that she has provided, so I'll hand it back to you.
Great, and Julie, are you on? Wonderful, we will pass it over to you.
Julie's here, can you hear me? Yeah,
We can hear you, you're a bit quiet.
all right, if I speak louder, is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
I said, okay. All right, Good evening. Hello, Port Alberni. My report was submitted earlier this month. I'm really here to answer any questions you might have. I didn't prepare a presentation or any slides. I'm just here to answer any questions that you might have about the research that I put together from the 13 local governments. There it is. There's a summary table there. These are the 13 local governments that Port Alberni wished to compare itself to in terms of remuneration for the mayors and for the councillors. And so there's a table there that summarizes the current rates and compares them to Port Alberni. I've compared it at the next table at the median level, but obviously you're free to do what you would like to do. You've got lots of autonomy when it comes to council remuneration. And I've got different markers there in terms of looking at the average and the median, below the median and above the median. But really, if there's any questions for you, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I will go to Councillor Solda and then Councillor Mealy.
Madam Mayor, what would be really nice is to go through that whole thing, because just for the public, so they can understand too. I mean, not everybody's got on their computers and that, and it's really important, you know, to understand what's going on instead of just flipping through a page.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have even just a high-level overview of, you know, I think we understand what it means when you say that we're at the median, but a little bit of the methodology of how we are comparing ourselves in Port Alberni to other communities. And I know there's a couple options included in there as well. So maybe just a really high level on the report.
Sure, through the chair. We've got 13 municipalities from across British Columbia, various rates of pay. The bigger the municipality, the higher the salaries. We can see that. So Vernon is our largest city in terms of that you're comparing yourself to in terms of annual expenses and population. And the mayor's salary and the councillor salary is also the highest. So not unusual to see the larger the city, the higher the rates of pay for the elected officials. Usually the work that is required, and that gets reflected in the compensation. And then some of the smaller cities, or the smaller cities there is Ladysmith is the smallest in terms of expenses, but not lowest in terms of salaries. So lower in terms of councillor, but not the mayor. So there's certainly some variety of salaries in there. And when I say that we compare to the median, so most municipalities, when we're looking at data, they'll say, listen, we don't want to be the highest, we don't want to be the lowest, so we want to look in the middle. So the median is just the middle, is a way of saying it's the middle of the market. So it's not the average, because an average number, if a really high number can pull the average up, and a really low number can pull the average down. So when we're looking at compensation, we like to say, well, where are we? If we're looking at these 13 municipalities, where are we compared to that? So we'd say, well, if we want to be in the middle, there's going to be some that pay more and some that pay less. And the median numbers are actually pretty darn close to what Port Alberni is paying for their salaries. So we can see that the median is for the mayor's salary is $70,445, and the actual salary for the Port Alberni is $70,688. So you're right there in the middle of the pack of those 13 British Columbia municipalities. And same with the councillor salary as well. So the middle of the pack for a councillor salary is at $31,800, and Port Alberni is at $31,500. I'm rounding up. All right. And then the other example is, the other thing to look at when you're looking at mayor and councillor salaries is the percentage of the councillor versus the mayor. So a lot of municipalities will just set the councillor pay as a percentage of the mayor, and Port Alberni is at 45%, and that's where most of the municipalities are too. They kind of average out to be about 45% as well. That's on base salaries. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want me to just stop there and see if there's any questions for base salary? Okay. All right, and then the questionnaire that we sent out, thank you through the chair. So we went through and asked a bunch of other questions about other practices. So we asked if you do compensation, if you have a philosophy. Just all of the respondents, all of those 13 cities say that they have a bylaw or policy that sets compensation for elected officials. None of them have made any changes in the last 3 years. 2 of them are also doing a review, like Port Albernians, so they're looking at perhaps making some changes. So we asked about mileage reimbursement. Everybody's pretty much in line with the CRA, or a little bit different. Port Alberni is at 67 cents per kilometer. Everybody else at CRA, which is 73, and there's a couple at 70 and one at 65 as well. Okay, so nothing unusual there for mileage reimbursement. Always an interesting question when you ask whether you consider the elected official positions full-time or part-time. I'm noticing I don't get a lot of responses to that question. 4 did indicate that their mayor is full-time, and 3 indicated that their mayor is part-time. All the ones that responded indicated that their councillors are part-time, but 5 did not define whether their elected officials were full-time or part-time. There's no acting allowance. Port Alberni doesn't have an acting allowance for the mayor, and most of the comparative municipalities do not as well. So Port Alberni is in line with the market practices for that. And then we asked about making adjustments. So most of the bylaws for the local governments will say we do a remuneration review every 4 years. And the timing of that is somewhere within that election cycle. And then in the in-between years of doing reviews, what they will do is they will do an annual adjustment. And most of them do an annual adjustment that reflects either what the staff get, or they will do CPI. Since 2022, that policy on doing CPI usually now has a minimum and a max. And so that's what most of the municipalities do, is that the 7 indicate that they follow CPI. One indicates, the other one does CPI for the city of Victoria. 7 did CPI for British Columbia. 2, again, followed the staff adjustment, like the QP one. And then one of them does an average of all 3. Okay. So a little bit of variety there in how they determine their annual adjustment. And then we also asked about, are there any other additional pay for elected officials? And 11 of them indicated that there was no additional allowances, same as Port Alberni. 1 indicated that they pay a meeting rate. If there's a meeting over and above the usual council meetings, they'll pay $137 for more meetings. And Port Alberni also has a similar policy where you'll pay for additional meetings as well. And let me see what else. Healthcare, interesting on the benefits. So there's some benefits there provided. Port Alberni does provide some extended health, dental, and life insurance to elected officials. And the other cities, 8 of them do provide some benefits. Often they're optional, so they're able to opt into them. They're not just offered where they must sign up. They can sign up if they want to, if they need to. The perquisites, really nothing surprise there. Everybody gets a tablet or a cell phone, same as Port Alberni. 1 indicated that they provide a recreation pass to all the elected officials. Some have some professional development training. And then a couple of questions at the end that we asked about a sick leave policy. Do they have a sick leave policy for elected officials? 10 of them did indicate that they did not have one. And a couple of them indicated that they do have a personal leave policy where you can for 6 months, and which can be extended to 1 year as well. And then parental leave, that question comes up has come up a few times for me when I do these reviews. So 9 of the organizations indicate they don't have a parental leave, but 3 of them do. So I think a few years ago, last time I did this, there was no parental leave. So it's nice to see that there's 3 organizations now do, 3 of your group anyway. I'm sure there's more than 3 in the province, but 3 in your group do have a parental leave policy.
Thank you. Maybe we'll stop there and see if there's questions. I'll go to, nope, no question from Councillor Mealy. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we went through this process last council term, remember, did we not use the same methodology that we were using the median for raise for councillors and the mayor? So if we're using the same methodology this time, I'm a little bit confused because there's a slight decrease for the mayor, but a very slight increase for councillors. So if we're using the same methodology, I'm wondering why that we're not getting any changes.
Just that different communities have changed different amounts.
Okay. And my second comment is, one thing I would like to see brought in, and you brought it up, which I thought was a great idea, was some kind of professional development. I realize going to conferences is a professional development process, but there has been, during the last few years, courses that do come up that would be very interested in taking, very relevant, but there's no funding for that, so that might be a thought. And also, I thought we had discussed sick leave and parental leave. I didn't know if we adopted it or just discussed it. I couldn't remember. Do you remember?
I don't think we put anything in place.
Okay.
And also, I think important to note that Julie, although I know your report says that we do have pay for additional meetings, we actually don't. Just, council will be aware of that, but we don't get paid for additional council meetings. And I'll go to our CAO.
So, Madam Mayor, there's a very small payment to the members when we're part of the EOC within the bylaws. So it's not well used if we meet as the executive group for the EOC, but that is in the bylaw, and that's the only example we have which is not used.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Mayor, it's on the bottom of page 91 and it continues into page 92, and that's where the confusion is there. But it does say, yeah, payment for attendance at ACRD emergency, next page, planning policy group meetings, so.
Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Ms. Casey. With regards to the comparison on mileage reimbursements, you stated that the Revenue Canada rate is 0.73 and we are paid 0.67 of a dollar, and that was nothing unusual or notable in a difference. But that's actually an 8.9% difference in the remuneration. Is that, was my math correct there?
Through the chair, yeah. So there's two others. So yes, you paid. The information that I have says that you're at 60 over rate, CRA rate. So CRA does 73 cents per kilometer for the first 5,000 kilometers and 67 cents per minute for additional kilometers. And the other two respondents, one does 70 cents, one does 65. So one above and one below, and everybody else follows CRA.
Right. Are you aware of what the collective agreement with our QP employees requires for mileage payments at the City of Port Alberni?
I'll go to our CAO for that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, so the City of Port Alberni follows the provincial reimbursement guidelines, so we update those at the same time the province does based on the policy that we have in place. So the collective agreement for QP is the same as the elected, same as the exempt.
Another question, through you, Madam Chair or Madam Mayor, is that I don't see that there's any comparison with similar type of work environments. That being on my submission that essentially sitting in a political position is a white-collar job, and there's no comparisons with similar white-collar jobs such as an engineer, an accountant, an administrator, management-type staff, both with municipal or corporate entities. Could you comment on why that wouldn't be an appropriate comparison?
Through the chair, I don't know that it wouldn't be an appropriate comparison. For the purpose of this report, we looked at other mayors and other councillors. We didn't do any comparison to elected officials to staff positions.
Okay.
I'm not saying you can't do that. Really, just because nobody else is doing something doesn't mean that you cannot do it. The provincial government provides a lot of autonomy and says that a municipality may choose remuneration amounts that it feels are appropriate.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Part of the reason for that question is the statement that these are our rates are comparable to market rates, and I'm just wondering about the term of market rates because political remuneration is not set by an economic market like those other positions that I described are set by an economic market, but political rates are set by the political market. People are not elected on the basis of what they are willing to be paid, but on the basis of their political platform. So would it be correct to say that market rates is a bit of a misnomer?
I would say it's what other municipalities are paying in terms of other municipalities. I don't like the word market. Fair enough. It's just a way to compare poor Alberni to what you do versus what other municipalities in British Columbia do.
No, fair enough. And essentially by comparing to the same types of municipalities who then compare with us, it's kind of a race to the middle, isn't it? There's really no objective external data that is compiled, but it's all completely within the realm of what similar politicians get paid and determining that they'll get paid similar to the similar politicians.
That's what most of the bylaws do, through the chair.
Was there any consideration with the Stats Canada data that suggests that wage increases over the last 4 years have been twice as much as the CPI increases, and whether or not the wage corresponding wage criteria that's compiled by Stats Canada would be a better representative data to use for future increases on whatever the wages or remuneration is set at?
And through the chair, that's something you could absolutely look at. It wasn't something I was asked to do as part of this report, but that would be
Yeah, I think that,
comparison.
sorry, Julie, thanks for the information. Councillor Patola, I think these are great questions, but I think some of them are just not relevant to the work that's already been prepared for this report. So they're not necessarily questions that need to go to Julie, but rather I think discussion for council to determine if there's further we'd like to go with asking for additional information.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would hate to suggest that we need more information on something that actually has been considered in the report. I'm just looking for the full basis of the report so I know if we need to ask for more or if it's already there and I just need to read it better. I just have one final question, Madam Mayor. And that is with regards to the remuneration of elected officials, and I think you've probably already answered this with the fact that it's compared to other elected officials, but in your experience in providing these surveys of similar wages and remuneration with elected officials, it's evident to me that elected officials are not considered employees, and therefore in some of the benefits that you've surveyed, the benefits simply don't exist because they're employee type benefits. And I'm just wondering if, in your opinion from your experience, you could comment on whether there would be likely to be a different result in the data surveyed if we were compared with actual employees, such as the provincial government is preparing to move towards for elected officials now, rather than just an excluded class of individuals. Sorry if that was wordy.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of what the provincial government is doing in terms of remuneration for its elected officials, so I cannot comment on that. I mean, we are seeing, in my experience, I am seeing elected officials in municipal government getting some additional benefits. Some of them are quite unique. Parental leave, as I mentioned, wasn't really being provided a few years ago. Now we're seeing that. I'm aware of municipalities, this is again not in your group of 13, but I am aware of other municipalities that provide some RSP contributions. I think there's one out there that does a clothing allowance. Several now do severance allowances for elected officials. So there's definitely some evolution in terms of benefits and remuneration changing for elected officials. And again, the province leaves a great deal of autonomy to the municipalities to set your own remuneration. And the UBCM wrote a council and board remuneration guide, which is available for free on its website. It was updated in 2023. It's a very good guide with a lot of advice and information in it.
Thank you. That's very valuable information, and thank you very much for the report that you provided. It's very helpful to us in our considerations.
Other questions from council? Councillor Solda.
So I'm not sure if it's for our presenter in that, but we did in the past have talked about when Councillor Douglas passed away, about after he passed away, all the benefits, he was totally everything was cut. And we talked about counseling for the family because it was pretty tragic at that time. So we have talked about, as a council, that. And also regarding benefits and that, health benefits, we did talk about, and I noticed on here, it doesn't say how the benefits work. Is it just for council only? Or is it open to the families? And we did talk about extending that in our case. As an example, I get the benefits, but I pay for my husband's. So, if I had kids, I'd be paying for them. So I'm just kind of curious to know how it is out there with other councils and stuff like that. Just curious. Thank you.
Julie, do you have an answer to that?
Through the chair, again, a lot of the benefits, a lot of the benefits are done through UBCM too. And my understanding is that UBCM offers a benefit program for elected officials, and then different municipalities will extend some of their benefits, not all of them, to some of elected officials as well. They're invited to participate. They're not required to participate. And again, it varies on the family situations as you described.
Councillor Solda.
And just to say, I have no problem with that. And but thank you for that. And Madam Mayor, just so the public knows, this is not for us. We're looking at for the next council, just so the public is aware of that too.
Council, just being cognizant that our presenter does need to leave, are there any further questions for Julie? And if not, we can ask additional questions for staff. I'll go to Councillor Haggard? Okay, thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My only question is the data available that would illustrate the P75 or P100 numbers in addition to the median numbers that we've received?
Through the chair, yep, your P75 is right there. I've calculated on the bottom of that table, and the P100 would just be your highest number.
Thank you very much.
So I haven't calculated that, but yes, so the P75 is there. If you wanted to look at the P75, the P75 would put you at 81% for the mayor and 89%.
Thank you. Council, any further questions for Julie? Okay, Julie, thanks so much for coming on and staying on a few minutes late with us. We will let you go and we will continue our discussion. Thanks again.
Thank you, Port Alberni. Thank you, Mayor. Bye-bye.
Thanks. I'll go to our CAO and then over to Councillor Haggard.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I think I can now go through the staff report and go kind of over the options and address some of the questions that were brought forward and how we may look at those if the committee would like to look at additional information. So when we look at the process that we're undertaking, as mentioned, we do this every 4 years before we actually see the new council come in, and it becomes effective when the new council is in January of 2027. So these decisions, these changes would be made for a future council. The process that we've gone through, we've done this previously, and it allows us to have that check-in to see where we are at. We are right in the medium right now. And the recommendation is that we continue on with the medium market because that has been the direction that has been provided by council in the past. But obviously tonight, we do have some other options there. That included looking at the 75th percentile of the comparative communities. That's within the report. We also looked at bringing a bylaw forward that would have benchmarks in the community to rank among where we see medium and income levels within the community. That was from the Census 2021. Looking for something that would be easily updated, something that we can reference consistently moving forward if that was something that council would like to seek. And reminding council that there is an option to add benefits because we did get that to third reading in 2025, and that bylaw stands. It was discussed, and we could finalize that within a new bylaw, bringing forward a bylaw that is cleaned up. This bylaw that we currently have for council remuneration and benefits is dated, and it's from 2014. And the option to add for additional meetings. So we do see some committees or some boards that we're assigning council members to that offer long extended meetings, and that is an option. I know the ACRD has a per meeting component within their remuneration. That is an option that council could consider if they feel there's extra effort, if it was for Vancouver Island Regional Library or some other options to make sure that there is fairness as far as the time that's spent within these committees that you're acting on as a councillor. When we looked at the benchmark, going back to option number 3, the benchmark, we just took the medium total income for the city of Port Alberni area, the medium employment income, the number, we provided the number of income recipients to show the amount of people that are in that class. Then we looked at the full-time workers and how much they are making in the city of Port Alberni area and the number there. So we did take the BC Consumer Price Index and took that and then increased that based on the amounts from 2020 to 2025 for a comparable in there for the committee. When we look at the cost of the implications that if there is no change, there would be no cost, but depending on the items that are selected possibly for change, we would have to cost that out depending on what council would like to see in the new bylaw. The cost of the benefits was costed out when we reviewed this in 2025, and that's approximately $14,000 or a 0.04% increase in taxation. Addressing the question that was asked by Councillor Patola, we do have the option to investigate a potential income earning of a professional or other like. We could research the census data and find out what is the average wage of a professional or any other type. So those are options that the committee can consider. So I'll hand it back to you, Madam Chair, if there's any other questions.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. Further to our discussion that we had on sick leave and parental leave, I would like to see that brought forward as part of the package. Speaking from personal experience, last council, I had some very serious surgery and I missed 3 meetings. And I'm, excuse me, and I was phoned by the corporate officer and told that I had to be at the next meeting because I'd only missed 3 meetings, otherwise I was out. So I had to come to a meeting. It wasn't you. So I came to a meeting and I was in so much pain, I didn't think I was going to make it through. I could hardly drive home. I was in tears because I was in so much pain. I really needed that 4th meeting off, and then I could come back to the next meeting. So sometimes life happens and we need to take that time off in order to heal properly and not be forced to come back when you're in that kind of pain. You can't make a good decision anyway. So I would like both of those left in, or up for discussion.
Could we get clarity on that? Because I think you are allowed to miss meetings. What you're not allowed to do is participate remotely or electronically in more than 3 meetings consecutively. I think that's what you would have been told, Councillor Haggard, and so you would have had to miss meetings and then give up your vote, which is a whole other issue if you want to be participating electronically. But I'm wondering if we have since changed that, because I do remember us, we did a new electronic participation bylaw. So we may have already addressed that, but I think regardless, a personal leave policy and a parental leave policy, in my opinion, should fully be in place for these roles. I've got Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Patola and Councillor Solta.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate that. So first of all, thank you to the compensation consultant for Drive OD for the report. Just really quickly on Councillor Haggard's point, I believe, and I will get but council can vote to remove a counselor after missing 3 regular council meetings. I will go on the record and say, Counselor, I would never vote for that for you. Just, well, I mean, and life happens. I think we have to understand that. I think if a counselor or a mayor was purposely missing meetings for a protest or something, personal issue, protest, whatever it is, I think then council should discuss it, obviously. But in a case like that where you're hurt after surgery, there's no way on this green earth that I would vote for that, and I don't think the rest of council would vote for that as well. So, so no worries there. I would like to just say on Councillor Solda's point, talking about Councillor Douglas, that I would like to see in this, just in the case of an untimely passing, dependents have the option to continue to pay for their coverage until the end of the term. That should be a no cost to the city if it's being paid already by the family. So at least there wouldn't be a lack of continuation for the actual benefits, and then it wouldn't just be a straight cutoff when people really need it. And it is obviously nobody's plan to run for council and pass away. Obviously, it is families' pain to bear after that, and we should do what we can to continue those benefits if the family is dependent on that. But again, if it is paid for already by the family and continue to be paid for by the family, then it should be a no cost to the city, a no increase. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I do see Krista here. I'm just wondering if what Councillor Mealy and Councillor Solda have asked about is actually something that's possible or not. And if we know at this time, because I do know, I mean, as much as we are different, we are also the same. And I think that the same kind of application for employees, not just within the city, but in regular workplaces is applied where, yeah, come on forward, where if somebody passes away, then their family is removed from benefits. So I think we want to make sure that we are somewhat keeping in line with what's normal as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I would want to check details, but typically in the event of somebody's passing, benefits are cut off at a certain point. In this case, in the situation where dependents aren't covered right now anyways, you would be talking about continuing a deceased person's benefits, which for sure can't happen. I think we could look at whether there was again, I think we need to be consistent, so we need to look into those details. It's not something that is done currently for staff that do have benefits for themselves and for their dependents or their families right now, so you'd want to consider that as well.
Thank you, very helpful. I think it's a great thought, and if it's possible, and if it's something that is done, can be done, then it's worth us looking at for sure. Just we might need more information. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So first of all, with regards to the question from Councillor Haggard, with regards to the sick leave, my memory is never as good as Madam Mayor's, but I do tend to remember the motions I have that are supported, and I forget the ones that aren't. And I believe that I brought forward a motion with regards to the rule, as it were, in the community charter about voting somebody off after 3 misses, and extending that in our policies so that somebody that was sick wouldn't be automatically forced to choose between their health and the potential of some controversial members wanting to vote them off. So I do believe that was changed earlier on in our term, but I could be corrected if I'm wrong. It was just simply an idea that I had, and like I said, I think it passed because I still remember it. Madam Mayor, if I might go on, I have 5 points with regards to the general conversation, so only 5. And the first that I'm going to start with, is that the question I asked the consultant, which was regards to CPI, which is a index valuing the price of general goods purchased, so groceries, gasoline, things like that, as compared to the data kept by Stats Canada with regards to actual wage increases, being 2 different items, and the wage increases recorded for the term of this council sitting is 2 times CPI, which means that over the term of this council sitting, we have fallen behind in real wages against other real wage earners by 8%. And I would suggest that CPI is not the appropriate measure to use for adjusting wages, but the wage criteria would be the appropriate one to use. Secondly, I noted from, again, Stats Canada, that the value associated with hourly volunteer wages, as in the benefit or the value of an individual who volunteers for an hour, is $32. I find it somewhat egregious that the amount of remuneration on an hourly rate to councillors is less than that attributed to someone that volunteers. It's also less than, my belief is, all of, but if I'm wrong, 99% of the employees of the city. We are the lowest paid city employees by significant amounts. With regards to maternity law benefits, I'm on point 3 already, is the provincial government has just adjusted the community charter to allow for maternity and paternity leave. It's not at the same level as attributed to all other employees across Canada, but at least it's a start. And from that, I can only deduce that the provincial government, which is our authorizing body, is recognizing that municipal politicians are not some crazy excluded class of indentured servitude, but is a group of people that work as hard as and should be entitled to the same benefits as every other citizen in our society. We are not lesser than, we are equal with. As far as Port Alberni goes, this is my 4th point. Not only are we equal to, but I think Port Alberni deserves better than the average politician, the median, the something that'll do, you know, an okay job. I think Port Alberni deserves better. In many of our employed positions, we pay above the median to attract quality candidates. Not all of them, but there are many that we do. And the point being not whether we pay more, the point being that we recognize to attract quality candidates, a certain amount of remuneration is appropriate. And that's remuneration that's competitive with the market, which brings me to the point of what is the market. So there is no course in how to be a politician. You can't go to university and get a degree in how to be a politician. Political science, but that's the study of politicians, not being a politician. The people that become politicians are people from society. They all have jobs before they're politicians, with a few exceptions. They leave those jobs where they receive a certain amount of remuneration in exchange for those hours of the day being given to the work of the city. They should be remunerated at the same extent or better. Now, I'm sure there are some people out there who have a fairly low-paying job and yet are still very interested in municipal politics, and their motivation to come is like all of our motivation to come. It's not for the money. It's for the good of our community. But by paying low wages, we affect an economic barrier against people that truly care about their community and forbid them from benefiting the community with that concern and care. We restrict the people that can join or run for office to those that have relatively low-paying jobs so that their change in remuneration isn't significant, to people that have no paying jobs, such as the retired, middle-aged, white male, me, to people that are genuinely so empathetic to their community that they will forego their own needs for the benefit of their community. None of those categories of people are a problem. They're not a concern. They form parts of council and they are valued additions to council. But my concern is that we exclude the engineers, the accountants, the administrators, the HR people, the management staff, the self-employed, the individual that is raising a child on their own and has their own home business and can't leave a home business and the child without appropriate benefits and remuneration. Childcare is not something we've talked about. Childcare exists in some industries and not in others. I understand that. But it is something that by not offering, we prevent individuals from a large swath of the population from running for office. And I think that's not appropriate. When I say white, middle-aged, retired men, meaning me, I think that I don't want more of me on council. I'm not sure I even want me on council, and some people out there will agree with that. But the reason I say I don't want more of me is because council benefits from a diverse cross-section of people that have a diverse background or life experience. So they can see issues from a point of view that I don't have. So we need 7 people sitting at this table that are as diverse as possible and include people with deep PhD educations in history or social sciences and people that have deep education tending bar, learning about social sciences. And for those reasons, I say that we must not maintain the status quo, because although this council is fantastic and the last council is fantastic, I am concerned about the next council that I will be able to choose to vote for, and that it is even more fantastic, that the candidates are at the cutting edge of their careers and their abilities and are not, kind of tired, like me. So I suggest that if nothing else, we at least go to P75, but specifically, I would recommend on my calculations that we set the mayor's rate at $95,000 a year and the councillor's rate at $80,000 a year to be adjusted yearly by the annual wage increase rate set by Stats Canada. And sorry, by suggesting it, I say that would be my motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dame. Discussion. I know there were other hands. I think we had Councillor Solda and then Councillor Dame, so I'll just continue on the list.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. So when I came into council back, I raised 3 kids. I worked. I did my activities, the theater. And so was I home? No. And I was never home according to my daughter. And but I did it, and I did it all. And I didn't come in here with any expectations. We weren't a union, and we can't compare ourselves to a union. Not saying we are, but we're not union. There's a difference in category. I came in here to make a difference and I enjoyed what I did and what I'm doing. So I look at it, there's a lot of things that have changed and evolved, and I know the world's changing and we have to keep up with some of the changes, but I'm not sure if I would agree. Somebody asked me, Cindy, what is council? What do you do? And I said, council is what you want to put into it. You can be there, and you can say, I can't make it to a meeting, and that has happened. It's what you do with it. And people on council, this council has worked good, and we work great together. We have our moments, but we sort it out, and we move forward to carry on with what we're doing. We can't please everybody, and we know that. Social media has define that, whether they're right or wrong. But I just want to say that. And so I'm going to leave that part of it right now so we can, there's more to it because I'm speaking on the motion. And then I will, I do have questions, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the motion on the floor, I guess I'm intrigued enough to want to continue this conversation, but I'm not feeling prepared to make a decision on something like this tonight. And of course, it would just be a recommendation anyways, but it does feel like it has some weight. So I think I would support it for the purpose of carrying on the discussion and allowing us time to kind of mull it over and research it between now and the council meeting. I think that's where I would be at on that. But certainly, Councilor Petola brings up some very valid and compelling points. And I have to admit that I really wrestled with not the quality of the report, but just sort of the process that that every municipality uses. It seems extremely arbitrary. Remuneration seems based on, if we're just kind of leaning over looking at what the other guy's got on his page, we're not basing it on any meaningful metric that sort of, I want to know, but where did they get their basis? And then they would say, well, we based it on them, and it's where did they get theirs? And it all comes down to, unfortunately, political will, I guess, and it's a little bit strange to me. So I certainly appreciate Councillor Petola's thoughts on the matter. Would definitely like to continue the discussion. I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight, so that's where I'm at on that. I did have a question, and because there's a motion on the floor, should I ask the question or wait until after? It's fine. I noted that in the agenda, there is mention of a previous motion, previous direction that was given. Sorry, just finding my spot here. June 9th, 2025, council provided the first 3 readings of an amending bylaw to a council remuneration and expenses bylaw. This seems to say that council made the decision to defer consideration of the amendment to future council. I was under the impression that we had passed the amendment, but that it was not to become effective until the next council, and that was what I thought we had
And that was
decided.
my memory of it as well. So, CAO.
Yeah. Sorry, Madam Chair. I did watch the video from that night, and that's correct. It was for the next council, and I failed to make that change once I made that note, so I apologize for that.
That's fine. Happy to hear that our memories are still intact on what happened at that meeting. Thank you, Councillor Dame. I've got Councillor Haggard. And sorry, before I go to Councillor Haggard, Councillor Petola, could you just repeat the numbers that you said? Because I heard you say 75 percentile and then 2 amounts, and so unclear on what the motion actually was.
Yes, thank you. I did refer to the 75 percentile. I also referred to the 8% difference between CPI and wage increase. I arrived at values that are a little rounded off into no dollars and cents, but 95,000 as the remuneration for the mayor on a yearly basis, starting, of course, with next council, and $80,000 for councillors, starting with this next council. That is, and then to be adjusted by the wage index of Stats Canada.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. Councillor Petola, I think, if I remember correctly, that your motion did pass for the sick leave and parental leave. That's why I was surprised to see it here as not being passed. So, again, memories. But I couldn't remember for sure, but I think it was. Just a couple of comments, though. What I thought some communities do is councillors receive 50% of whatever the mayor makes, and I thought that was a good kind of starting point. What I think what you're suggesting may be a little bit high for our community. However, you made some really good points about what we should think about. But what I don't agree with the mayor getting a decrease and us getting a $300 increase. I think that's way too low and that's not fair for the mayor. And I know how many hours that we all put in for $300. I just don't think that's right. And for a mayor to get a decrease, I don't think that's right either. But I don't have any idea what to put it up to.
Thank you. I will just speak because I don't see any other comments at this time. So I guess, Councillor Patola, I want to thank you for the thought that you've put into this. I know that this has been a point of discussion so many times. I think throughout all 3 terms that I've served as councillor or mayor. I think unfortunately there's no easy way to make this decision. Appreciate some of the comments around what we are comparing to and how that just circles us back to the same thing all the time. I was actually quite happy when I read this report and saw that we are at the 50th percentile median of the communities that we chose to compare ourselves to, because 4 years ago, that was not the case. We were, I think, about 60% of the median, and we had to make quite a large adjustment. And when we made that adjustment, it was hard for the community to accept. I think it was like a 40% increase to mayor and council salaries to get to a point where we were making wages that were in line with what other communities, similar size, similar sort of economic situations, and doing similar work for their communities, what they were earning. So I was actually quite happy when this report came forward to show that now we are in line. We don't need to necessarily make a big adjustment to get to that median again. It shows that the policy has worked. We've kept up with our peer communities, and we are where we are. Is it right? I'm not sure. And I appreciate, the comments that have been made by Councillor Patola. I have a hard time with the random numbers. Although I know that they're not random, I have to assume that there's no way they're random from Councillor Patola. I'm sure a lot of thought has gone into them and a lot of basis has come with that. However, I do struggle with putting forward another large increase, and particularly, I guess I feel really torn on the council suggestion, because councillor should not be a full-time job. I don't think it should be. I think if you're a full-time councillor, you're micromanaging staff, and that's not our job. If we tell our councillors that they're going to be full-time, I think it encourages them to start doing work that is not their work to do. So paying a councillor $80,000, I think, signals that we expect you to be here full-time, doing a job that, in my opinion, will give somewhat of a misconception of what the job of a councillor is and should be. So I struggle with that. At the same time, I do, recognize that we have, councillors, and I've known councillors on past councils, and I've known councillors in many other communities who have done a fantastic job for one term and then stepped away because of the financial impact on their families. They couldn't afford to be on council because, although it's not a full-time job, it is not a normal job either, and it is all-consuming completely. So, when I was on council, I remember thinking how, much time I put into my role as a councillor versus how much time I was putting into my business at the time. And there certainly was a disconnect. And people do end up taking way too much time away from, their own families and businesses or jobs. And there's a financial impact on that for sure. So I do think the salary of a councillor and the mayor needs to be fair and reasonable. But I think to go from $31,000 to $80,000 is not something I can support. I think that's just too significant of a jump. And I think it just crosses too far into a full-time kind of capacity. So I think that's my perspective. There's no easy way forward on this. Looking forward to more conversation, whether it be on this motion or another, or just at the council meeting, continuing this on. I think that's all I have for now. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this would not be on this motion, but would certainly be on further discussion for the future. And I take your worship's point with regards to full-time, part-time work. I know that the mayor of Bowen Island undertook a remuneration review for mayor and council, and being part of Metro Vancouver, they had an interesting approach that I thought had some value, and I'll just share that now, is they took the average of all the Metro Vancouver mayor's salaries, whatever that number came to, they determined that that was the value of one FTE. They then determined what each councillor and mayor's position represented with regards to an FTE. On Bowen Island, they came up with the formula that 0.8 of an FTE was appropriate for the mayor responsibilities on Bowen Island, and 0.5 was appropriate for councillors. So in that case, should we move in that direction, and if the FTE was valued at 95,000, which I could make a lot of arguments, I won't, about how being appropriate and in the range for professionals, that would then make council remuneration at 0.5 an FTE at 47.5. So a significant difference that would certainly recognize all of the comments that we've heard about part-time, full-time work. And certainly we could probably discuss further whether we wanted to have a additional remuneration for additional duties taken on.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Other comments? Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just really quickly, I feel like I need to just make sure I represented myself properly. What I'm most interested in is carrying the conversation of exploring how we might rethink this. Then the exact numbers themselves, I actually didn't give a whole lot of consideration to in the motion because I'm more interested in the conversation and we might arrive at completely different numbers. So just to be clear on the aspect of it that I'm very supportive of.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay. I struggle with supporting the motion only because it does have the specific numbers in it, and I don't necessarily support the specific numbers. I'd love to continue the conversation, and I mean, I think it's even a reasonable jump to go from where we're at to P75, but it does, you know, that might not be the right answer either. I'm wondering if either tabling this without firm direction and bringing it back to the next committee of the whole so that members of council could have more time to think about it. Maybe we could then, you know, continue a little bit of our own research on other innovative ways that communities may be looking at this issue rather than council feeling like they have to vote in support or against motions with specific numbers. I'm seeing nodding. Would members of council be okay with that if we postpone this to our next committee of the whole, had a further conversation at that point? Councillor Patola.
I would fully support a time for introspective thought on the issue.
And I'll just go to our corporate officer. Since there is a motion on the floor, would it just be a motion to postpone? Yes.
If the motion you're wanting to bring forward is the one that Councillor Patola brought forward, then it would be to postpone. If you're wanting it to be different because you don't want the numbers in it, then we would have to abandon that motion and then just ask to postpone the matter.
I think I'm comfortable if it's postponed with the motion as it is and gives further discussion from there for council without anyone on council needing to vote on the specific numbers today. Okay, seeing general comfort with that, could we have a motion to postpone? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any further discussion? Okay, and for clarity, that's to postpone to the next committee of the whole. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thanks everyone for the conversation. And we will go back to the beginning of our agenda. Feels like we've gotten so far, but we haven't. We'll go to delegations.
I still have questions to Madam Mayor on all this.
Oh, okay. Councillor Solda, you missed your opportunity, but
No,
we'll let
because-
you ask your questions.
So when I was talking earlier, I wanted this motion to be completed because I wasn't speaking on behalf of the motion. So what I want to go back to when Councillor our counselor passed away, and Counselor Douglas, he wasn't the only one at the time that passed away through council, which would be Counselor Ike Patterson, and he died while he was serving online. And I don't want to see that the family gets paid to the end of the term, because that person could pass away a year into it, and then you got to pay the family for the next 2 years. That's not what I'm referring to. I am referring to counseling for the family more so. It's all about the counseling part of it. And because, I mean, I know both families really had issues, and it was really hard for them. And if you don't have any benefits or anybody to help you with counseling, it really is a problem. So that is what I'm referring to. I just want to be clear on that. I'm not talking about wages or anything like that. And if you did look at wages, then until the next person that was elected and then cut off, right? Because it takes a little while for everything to happen. I just wanted to say that. And also, yeah, I'll leave it like that. That's probably, oh, and regarding if you're sick or you have surgery, we had a counselor that had heart surgery. And if you remember, Madam Mayor, and he couldn't come for a couple of months, 3 months, and we said that was okay. Council voted on it, and we moved forward, and then he joined us, and everything was good. So it's based on our voting. So yeah, we're not going to make you come home and, I mean, come home. I feel like home here. Yeah, we're not going to force them to come here, and they're got to be flat out. So I just wanted to bring that up too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Okay, seeing no other questions, we will move on to delegations. Item number 1, we have Alberni Clayoquot Health Network and Marty DeWitt here to provide an update. Hi, Marcy.
Hello, thank you. Mayor and Council, thanks for having me this evening. I'm just going to, I believe I can share my screen. And I'll get my PowerPoint going. And are you able to see that? Oh, excellent. I can see it on your screen. So good evening, everyone. My name is Marcy DeWitt, for those of you that don't know. I'm the coordinator for the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network. Sorry I can't join you in person tonight. A little bit busy here on the West Coast today, and the drive was a little bit more than I was able to do for an evening meeting. So as usual, every year I like to go around to our various different decision-making tables in the region and provide an update on the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network. As you know, we are a network in the region that has been in operation for 10 plus years now. Over those, I guess, 11 plus years, we've really been increasing our focus and ensuring that our role and mechanisms are clarified. So we've kind of gone from a very much planning role within the communities and are now seeing implementation of projects as well as ensuring that we are still bringing good information, good data forward to our local decision makers in order to see change within the social determinants of health. So the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network is tasked with working on the social determinants of health, the pieces of our community of building healthy communities, which impacts our health, but is outside of the health system. So we are working on a variety of different initiatives and planning tools, looking at data, and looking at the areas where we will have the most impact as a community in order to see development and health within the general population. We want to make sure that we are looking at ways that we can decrease poor health in our communities, but then also looking at big issues, big complex issues like poverty, like access to health equity, and those big themes within our region. So we do that through a network structure. So our predominant group is our table of partners. Those folks meet monthly to help us with our network governance, any decisions, communications and connections, and also assisting with advocacy and resourcing around our priority areas. We also convene action tables around specific priorities and or participate in a variety of other networks. So we focus on networking the networks, ensuring that there is good connections between issues in the community, engagement and advocacy, and identifying some of those really big shared priorities that we have both within our subregions and within the region as a whole. And working out to Vancouver Island and the whole of BC as well through our provincial as I guess national networks as well. And then we also try to engage the community through collecting stories and priorities through community engagement and ensuring that we have that kind of full cycle of activities happening for communications in our network. So as I mentioned, over the past 10 years, we've really looked at ensuring that we were moving from a research and planning network into a network that has the capacity to implement. We've done this with very targeted work to build awareness, to bring good data to decision makers, and to ensure that we're engaging community members to bring priorities up to those decision makers. As a network, we also have the ability to act nimbly and kind of pivot and alter our direction to ensure that we are working on what is most imminent in our region. So today, I'm just going to talk you through a couple of the things that we've been up to this year. As you know from last year, we did update our strategic plan in 2024. This allowed us further focus around poverty reduction and building healthy communities. We do also have a lot more focus on ways that we can engage community and network the networks within our Alberni-Clayoquot region. A couple new things around our network development. We now have an executive committee, which has been a fabulous support for me as the coordinator to make decisions in a fast way, as well as have some support on those decisions. And as I presented last summer, have been working with staff at the city on the Alberni Valley Continuum of Care Coalition. So our predominant action orientated priority in the network is around poverty reduction. We've been working on that since 2017 with a variety of different planning reports, action plans, but we've also done a lot of implementation that impacts poverty reduction in our region. So I just want to talk to you today about the couple pieces that we have done in 2025. So we pulled together our 2025 poverty reduction data updates. So this compiles the most recent census data, any of the successes that have been seen since our 2022 action plan, as well as other issue areas and data points that are relevant to the recommendations that came forward in our 2022 action plan. So that's been included in your agenda. And we will be ensuring that we are doing some sort of a report around the poverty reduction action plan with new census data. So we aim to be doing this every 2 to 5 years in order to really look at those benchmarks and have some good information on how we can move the benchmark around poverty reduction in our region. As presented last year as well, we were able to calculate the 2025 Alberni Valley Living Wage. So this has been included in your agenda and sent out. We will continue to ensure that you have good data around the living wage as well as poverty reduction in the area. One of the things that we wanted to highlight is in terms of the municipal levers in terms of affecting the living wage in Alberni Valley specifically. Some of the biggest levers that decrease the living wage and ensure that folks have more money in their pockets were transit, housing, and childcare. So those three things, when robust in communities, bring down that living wage so that more money is kept in the pockets of families. And there is just a lot of data and economic kind of backing to that. So we partnered with Living Wage BC, BC Policy Solutions, and Van City in order to put this calculation together. And the complete summary is in your agenda package. Another key part of our poverty reduction recommendations was around transportation and access. So ensuring that folks not only have access to healthcare, but also access to education, employment, basic needs. And in many of our communities, especially out here on the West Coast, that was not the case. So as some of you know, since 2014, we had been working on getting a BC transit system implemented in the West Coast. And last year that happened. So this year, we are now on to working with with BC Transit as well as some community partners that are really hoping to see Alberni Valley connections into other systems, which is key for healthcare and access to other services throughout the island. And then anything that we can do to support the Alberni Valley system, ensuring that that is also a robust system for folks to access basic needs, health, childcare, you name it. And lastly, we've been working still around Youth Futures. So the Communities Building Youth Futures was a program that we were luckily chosen for. We received $700,000 over 2.5 years, hired 3 coordinators, and did a ton of capacity building in the region, from Barclay communities to Alberni Valley to West Coast. That has now led to our Foundry partnership, or kind of led into. So that was one of the many factors that assisted us in getting the Foundry that we have now. And a big part of that is the outreach services into the West Coast and rural and remote communities. So this year we have been happy to support the Foundry development, but also see a youth navigator position in the rural and remote communities, which has, I guess, just very much carried over from the youth facilitator roles that we once had through the Building Communities Building Youth Futures project. So on the horizon for 2026, we've already seen a variety of different inroads into looking at income recommendations from the poverty reduction plan. So we've seen some self-employment workshops that we've partnered with INEO to ensure came to our region. We've also been working on some social finance opportunities through the Tamarack Institute. And we'll be looking at other ways that we can bring new programs and advocacy around income recommendations for poverty reduction into the region. We'll be continuing on Alberni Valley transportation advocacy, as well as really looking at our communications and engagement, what we can do to kind of bring that up to date, and looking at different ways that we can engage our communities. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm really happy that I could join you tonight.
Thanks, Marcy. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Ms. DeWitt, for the presentation today. Sorry to make you wait all this time. I just reading through your partners, and I know it's talked about later in your report and throughout, but do you have specific partnerships with local First Nations, or maybe even more specifically, New Luth Tribal Council, Health Network, or Health Department?
Thank you. Yes, throughout the years, we have had folks from Neutral Tribal Council or First Nations Health Authority on the table of partners. At this time, we don't have anybody sitting there, but we do actively engage all communities within our process and work actively with Neutral Tribal Council, individual communities, and First Nations Health Authority partners.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, and thanks for that question, Councillor Mealy. Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Marcy, for coming and presenting. All right, we will move on to item number 2. We have Reconciliation Theatre Society, and I will pass this over to Tom, who is presenting online.
I'd square everyone. Akwana Lama. It's nice to see you all this evening. I'm zooming in from Snuneymuxw territory, and my name is Tom Rokeby. I'm the Artistic Director of Reconciliation Theatre Society. I want to begin by thanking you for making time on your agenda to hear from us today on our proposal to access funding from your Reconciliation Fund. Reconciliation Theatre is a Indigenous-led nonprofit theatre company that makes its home in Snuneymuxw territory, and annually takes upon itself to produce and tour a live theater production across Vancouver Island. Over the last 4 years, as you can note in the supplementary material that Kim made great efforts to get you this afternoon when it was missed from the original agenda package, you can see that we've grown over the last 4 years to service most of the communities on Vancouver Island, except Port Alberni. We have been trying. I have a good friend and fellow alumni, Dave Witchar from the Peak radio station, who's been working tirelessly to get us across the hump and over into the Capitol Theatre. And this year, we think it's going to happen. In fact, we know it's going to happen. We've finally made the arrangements for us to bring our tour to the Capitol Theatre on Saturday, July 11th. We're producing a Canadian hit called Women of the Fur Trade. It was a fringe festival sensation that went on to pack theaters at Stratford and is now being produced professionally across the island. And we think it's the right show to bring to Port Alberni, and it's the right time to introduce Reconciliation Theatre's work to your community. We're asking for $5,000 from the Reconciliation Fund today so that we may be able to offer this performance to the community free of charge. We would be using the money to pay for venue rental and technicians, to pay for travel and accommodation costs, local event promotion, and an artist performance fee. This is a model that we've successfully developed with the Sid Williams Theatre Society in Courtenay. And over the last couple of years, it's resulted in over 300 people joining us last fall for our production of The Boy in the Treehouse by Drew Hayden Taylor. We're very excited to be able to bring this to all the island communities because our members really do represent all the island communities. We are a society made up of many Indigenous and settler artists who make Nanaimo home, but because of the nature of Nanaimo and at Vancouver Island University, our members are from all over the island and sometimes across BC, but specifically from nations across the island. They're very excited to be able to bring their work back to the communities that they came from. Just one example, our lighting designer last year was a young fellow by the name of Justin McFadden who grew up cutting his teeth at the Capitol Theatre. And we're excited to be able to showcase his work across the island. The reason why we brought it to your attention was that Dave Witchar and his great advocacy was made aware that you do have a Reconciliation Fund. It's such an enlightened move in this day and age. I really must applaud you for it. And we really do think that this production, if we're able to fill it with a great cross-section of Port Alberni, and that would include, of course, the local Portal Players community. We reach out to CISAT, and I've been speaking with Brittany over there, and I have a name of Melissa Bigmore to contact at Tepikasath, and haven't made that connection yet, but certainly won't stop trying. We'd like to be able to fill the theater with everybody who'd like to be there and not just those who can afford a ticket. So it's with that in mind that we'd like you to consider getting on board with us. In exchange for the financial support, of course, we'd be able to promote this as an initiative of the city of Port Alberni and make sure that all the people who work in this space are able to attend and be a part of what will be a great evening. I don't have too much more to offer you except for just to show you on the supplementary work, supplementary material that we've grown pretty significantly in the 4 years that we've been in operation, and I think it's really quite simple. We've created a. Oh, did I lose people there?
No, we can see you still.
Okay, sorry, my screen changed. We've created an inclusive company that's able to produce unique programming. As much as local theater companies would like to produce material that is topical on Indigenous issues and takes Canadians on a journey to reconciliation, we have simply created the company that is inclusive enough to do that. And that's why we've really seen such a wonderful reception from communities. Langham Court Theatre in Victoria. I mentioned the Sid Williams. We play the River City stage in Campbell River. Of course, we host our own work at the Vancouver Island Conference Center in Nanaimo. And these are relationships that allow us to, bring this unique work into communities that, frankly, otherwise wouldn't see it. Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to take up your time with today, except for, again, to thank you for the opportunity to speak and to thank Kim for the heroic efforts of getting the material in front of you this afternoon. I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for the information. I will just start and then I'll go to members of council. I'll just say I think this sounds like a great initiative and glad it's coming to Port Alberni, and I really like the concept of trying to offer it for free so that we can open it up to more people. My only comment is that our reconciliation fund, we're really intentional about not putting out those funds without full upfront support from Sashot and Hupachesset on programs that, on initiatives that we use the funds for. So just wondering, I know that you did mention Melissa Bigmore, who's at Sashot, and then working with someone at Hupachesset. Have you gotten to a point of having support from Sashot or Hupachesset for showing this in Port Alberni yet?
I wouldn't want to give you the impression that we've gone to Chief and Council. That would certainly be something that we would be more than happy to do. We've done what reconciliation does on every nation that we tour to, and that is to reach out to the local nation and to facilitate ticket distribution to elders and community members who may not otherwise be able to be there. This is something that we will do regardless of council's decision, because it's what we do in every nation. If an express commitment from Chief and Council would help, I would be happy to drive over the hump and make that happen.
That's wonderful, thanks. Just from my perspective, support from Chief and Council doesn't have to be a formal motion, but City of Port Alberni Council hearing that Sashot and Hupachesset councils are both supportive of the showing in Port Alberni is really important to our city before we give reconciliation funds out. We always just want to be cognizant because we don't know what the film is or what the messages are. We want to be cognizant, obviously, that Sashot and Hupachesset are both supportive. Other than that, I love the idea of offering this for free to community members, and if we can make that happen, I would certainly be happy to offer reconciliation funds with the support of Sashot and Hupachesset. Are there other comments? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Rokeby, for appearing tonight, and thank you very much for plotting it out on what you plan on doing. I must agree with Madam Mayor. The reason why this came back is just there is no official yes from our local First Nations, and that is very important to us. So I'm much like Madam Mayor. I like what I see, and that's not a problem, but I think we just need to have official buy-in from Hoopachesit and Sechot First Nation. Just maybe through you, Madam Mayor, to staff, how much is in the fund as we speak?
Madam Chair, so we've committed about 20,000 so far, but we do have 30,000 that we are looking at to support the Orange Shirt Day and some activities. So Tashot has asked for some funding. We haven't brought that to council, but just so that you're aware, they're seeking to use some of those funds for that day.
And it is a $50,000 annual fund, so we are, probably towards the top of it for sure, based on how council decides to move forward with the Orange Short Day Walk. Councillor Solda.
Thank you for your presentation. Just looking at the script, it's an interesting script, small cast, and I like the idea it's a comedy and a tragedy, but mainly played through comedy, and which is really excellent. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that production. Thank you.
Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I echo the words of Councillor Mealy and Madam Mayor, although I would attach a concern that we, as the city, would be funding attendance by individuals that are not of the city, and wondering if this is something that ACRD would partner in or contribute to or somehow make conditions for, because I think from reading the introduction of the script, I think it's something that not just the city of Port Alberni, but all residents in our community could benefit from.
Absolutely. I will just say that the ACRD does not have a reconciliation fund. They do have a grant and aid process, but the meeting is tomorrow. The application date has closed, unfortunately. So probably not something that can be accommodated for this year, but agree with you completely on your points, both that it would be beneficial and as well that, this is just one more thing that the city ends up paying for that, often is enjoyed by all of the residents of the Alberni Valley. So outside of this conversation, Tom, but just a separate side point that we have to continue to work on a way to work toward equity there. Council, I'm going to suggest a motion to approve this subject to formal approval by Sechot and Hoopachesit being received. Second. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, everyone. Okay, and so Tom, we will just, that would just mean that we have given approval to this so long as you have gotten the support of Sechot and Hoopachesit, and we will just hold until then. But really appreciate you coming today and looking forward to the production.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, we wouldn't move forward the production on their territory without their approval. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, we will continue on. We have no unfinished business, so we'll go on to staff reports. Item number 1, official community plan update, upcoming draft document.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I am excited to present you with an update on our work towards a draft official community plan. Work on the project resumed this April, and we're now finalizing a draft document for Council's review. Today's report is for information only, but it's a good opportunity for us to update you on some of the background of staff's work to date. As you're aware, the new OCP will guide land use and community development over the next 20 years with updated direction on housing, growth, climate action, and other important issues. Phase 1 of the project focused on building a shared community vision with guiding values that we're calling touchstones in the document. And more than 600 people participated in creating that vision and touchstones through surveys, workshops, working tours, school engagement pop-ups, and focus groups. Phase 2 of the project launched in early 2024, and this was the policy phase. with more than 330 people participating in engagement on growth and climate action. Growth scenarios and climate action. The strongest community support was for compact growth with more density and mixed-use development in designated growth centers and nodes. And there was strong support in the community for climate action aligned with provincial targets on emissions reduction. Following our community engagement in 2024, staff then proceeded with key technical work on an interim housing needs report, a complete communities assessment, a view corridor study, urban design and land analysis, draft policies, development guidelines, and mapping. In terms of staff's next step, at an upcoming meeting, we will present council with a draft OCP document and request support from council to engage with the community on that draft. Administration is recommending that council receive this report for information, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much, Brian. And we've already dealt with item number 2, no correspondence, so on to new business. Item number 1, policy review and recommended updates. Sarah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So administration did a review of our policy manual to bring forward those that are outdated, duplicated elsewhere, operational in nature, or no longer required. Today, we brought forward 7 different policies for you to consider rescinding, and each of those under the analysis offers you the reasoning behind why we'd like to rescind those, and asking that we'll go forward and bring forward ones that are administrative in nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Councillor Dame.
Thank you. I would like to go ahead and make that motion. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council rescind the following council policies that are outdated, duplicated elsewhere, operational in nature, or no longer required. Computers, disposal of obsolete surplus, Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I guess I should say the numbers. 1, computers. 2, Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Council. 3, internal controls and cash management policy. 4, internal controls and cash management procedures. 5, tag days. 6, solid waste city dumpster service and payment arrears. And 7, water meter billing due date.
Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carried. And item number 2, Municipal Campground Business and Development Plan. Welcome, Louis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. This report is to present the Municipal Camping Ground Business and Development Plan for the phased rollout of municipal dry camping facilities, and seek the committee's endorsement of the plan and direction to consider Phase 1 paper mill dam within the 2027 capital plan process. At the February 17th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting, administration presented the phased establishment of municipal campgrounds concept. The Committee of the Whole meeting considered matters related to the campground at Paper Mill Dam Park, including its operation, management, and future direction. Discussion focused on balancing public access, service levels, costs, and operational responsibilities associated with the site. Council subsequently approved bringing forward a plan and directed administration to prepare a detailed business and development plan, prioritizing Paper Mill Dam Park as the pilot location with Seton Park identified for future expansion. The attached municipal campground business and development plan fulfills that directive, outlining operational frameworks, financial projections, and risk management strategies required to activate these underutilized municipal assets successfully. The business development plan is anchored by a financially conservative, highly scalable model designed to shift the city from a passive landowner to an active economic driver. We are also planning on seeking input from both the Tshishat and Hupacheset First Nations, and will be considered through the consultation to better understand any concerns and potential impacts on their economic development plans. There are plenty more details provided in the report, and I am here to answer any questions that council may have pertaining to this report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, just a quick question, because this hasn't been presented to Tisha or Hupachesa, correct? Am I?
This has not been formally presented to them. However, we did share the report, let them know what was coming up with the two chiefs, and we have committed to ongoing conversation with them. We actually think there possibly might be opportunity for partnership here, but a little too early to say.
It's just that I'm thinking, are we putting the cart before the horse without that consultation first and going ahead with this? Or
I think we're gathering information, aware that Sachat certainly has expressed an interest in this project. We don't have confirmation of if that's an interest in a supportive way or in an opposed way, but we have let them know that we will be, engaging with them further on this. So I think it's perfectly fine for us to continue gathering information and see if there's interest from council in continuing to move it forward. And both Sachat and Hupachesset are aware that we're continuing to explore this.
And one further question is that, there's a lot of sites here. I like the layout, but the other thing too is you're looking at one caretaker. Is there going to be anybody else to oversee it? Who's going, is one enough, or I'm not sure. I've never looked after a campground.
Through the mayor, or through the CEO, sorry. We will continue to explore and examine the plan to ensure that it is well maintained. Part of the process would be to seek out an expression of interest, and in order to ensure that we have the appropriate staffing to ensure that the site is well managed.
Okay, and the other question is regarding the general public. So this is a campground and the general public want to come and swim at Paper Mill Dam. Will they be allowed to do that? How will that look in the greater picture?
Through the CAO, we are fully intent on ensuring that public access remains. The current plan for phase one is to develop an area that is not actually considered park space right now. It's zoned for Paper Mill Dam, but it's actually not developed and hasn't been used for clear park space. So that is the first part of the plan.
Waterfront for the people forever.
Okay. So my other question is, now are we looking at seasonal? What's the picture for that one? Is it going to be all year round, seasonal, and long stay, short stay? Or is that just in the weeds right now? We're not dealing with that.
No, those are good questions. Louis or our CAO?
Madam Chair, so it would be all year round. We wouldn't have long stays. It's more of a campground so that the public can use it and explore the community. So that's the intent of it. So it's not a long stay campground.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you. First of all, I want to point out this is not a business plan. So this concerns me. I thought we were going to see a full business plan. And that was also my concern about not having talked to Sachat and Hupachesset First Nations yet. I just want to point out that Hupachesset currently runs a campground. I know at one time Sachat was talking about operating a campground, and I haven't heard anything about that for a while, so I'm not sure where that's at. Have you done a competitive analysis, like how many campgrounds and sites are operating in the city and ECRD? And also, are you aware that there is a proposed 100-site campground adjacent to Paper Mill Dam Park with full amenities?
Madam Chair, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And I have a question about your campground costing. It says Upper Park 40 sites, and you're going to have 3 bear-proof bins and 3 porta potties. But in your Lower Park, which only has 20 sites, you're proposing 4 bear-proof bins and 4 porta potties. So those numbers don't make sense to me. Can you shed any light on that?
Madam Chair, so that is the public area that we currently use. So we do find there is a lot of waste that comes from tubers during the summer. So we often have to clean up a lot of debris and stuff from that. And yeah, there's more activity because it is a public area.
Thank you. Under annual maintenance and costing, it says labor. Is that for the caretaker? Because these numbers are really low if you're looking for a full-time caretaker. And where is that caretaker going to live on the property?
Madam Chair, it would be on the site, on the upper site, with the campground to keep an eye on that and monitor that. So they would be living at the site, caretaking the site for us, and that would be the cost of the caretaker.
I don't know where you're going to get a caretaker for that amount of money. Like, are they going to be proposing they live in a trailer or is in the residence? I'm not quite clear.
Maybe just for further clarity, Andrew or Louis, so the plan around the caretaker, have we mirrored that from other caretaker arrangements we've had?
So, Madam Chair, what we've done is we have a member of staff that has operated campgrounds in the interior, and this is the costing that he referenced when he operated in those situations. So you have to imagine that there is they are living there and provided a pad, and part of their remuneration is the ability to site a pad there and stay there and live.
Who would want to live there when they have to use a porta potty and they can't shower or do laundry?
I think it's outside of the scope for today to determine if somebody would want that caretaker agreement or not. I think the next phase of this, if council chooses to move it forward, is going out to, as discussed, look for an operator. And I think that those things would be further fleshed out there. Hear your concerns, Councillor Haggard. But I do think that this has come from, a basis of similar campgrounds. And I know that we've also had, agreement with caretaker at, not through the city directly, but at McLean Mill, and we've explored other ones as well in the past.
And for the revenues, did you base that on from this person as well? Like, how did you get to these revenues?
Madam Chair, that's what we did, is we relied on the experience that a member of staff has had experienced in operating a campground in the interior, and he referenced that with a very conservative estimate of the revenue based on 30% through the whole year, being with vacancy being 70% for the whole year. So.
I just want to make a statement that my preference is to work with the ACRD to take Paper Mill Dam, Seton Park, and Somas Park into the regional park, so that would lower our cost, because with the proposed 100-site campground right next door with full amenities, I just don't know who would want to stay in a dry campground, and meanwhile we put all this money into it. So this is my preference. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I still think we need to have some dialogue with our local First Nations before, and especially regarding their campsite. I think we need to talk to them, because some staff we have a new staff member, and Andrew's in the new position and didn't realize that we do have some kind of motion, and I think it was in 2024 or something like that. I'm just guessing. So maybe we can, take a peek or something. Thank you.
Could you just clarify, you said some kind of motion in 2024?
We talked about campgrounds and that, and it's in I think it's in our minutes. And when I was looking it up, I believe
it was in our strategic plan last term, and I believe there is a light reference to it in this strategic plan as well. I know that there have been motions also, but they've sort of supported this work, so I'm not sure. I just wasn't clear on specifically what you were referencing. Okay, Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know the concerns and appropriate questions from fellow councillors Solda and Haggard. And I think that what is presented before us, in my opinion, is really the basis to enter into consultation. I don't think consultation would be effective if we didn't even have any idea what we're talking about. And I think it's completely appropriate for staff to present the initial framework and seek council's approval on that, just to make sure they're going in the right direction, so that when those negotiations occur, they will be about the proper subject matter. And so I really do support this report in its form, and support the continuing process as the recommended motions describe. As a side note, I actually learned something on Facebook today. I don't know why it was in my algorithm, but it was specifically with regards to this site and the incredible mansion that used to exist there, that was built in the late 1800s, and had all of the modern European conveniences, tile from Italy, fixtures and ceramics from France, et cetera, electricity from England, but we know that didn't work very well. And it actually existed on that site until the early 60s, at which point it was torn down, and for the purpose of extracting the gravel beneath it. So this would be a nice return to residential, camping residential, but inhabitation of that area.
Very interesting. I had no idea. Were there other hands for comments? Okay, so I'll just make a couple of comments. First off, I want to be really clear that we haven't skipped a step with Sechat here. How we work with Sechat is on the basis of sharing information as early as possible. This is not the first time that we have talked with Sechat or let them know that we're in very early stages of, looking at concepts for campgrounds. And we did let them know ahead of time that this was going to be coming to council. But as Councillor Patola said, there's a different level of discussions that occur when we know that council is actually committed to moving a project forward, and then we're information sharing in a different way. So both Sechat and Hupachesset are aware that we're considering this, but we haven't had, deep conversations with them on it yet, because there hasn't been a commitment from council to move this project forward, only to explore it and look further at information. One thing that I've continuously heard from the public, as this has been talked about a bit, from what I can see, maybe it's being talked about more on AV Chatterbox, I don't know. It is, apparently it is. But what I've seen is really some support, a decent amount of support for adding more campsites to the community, so long as they are campsites, and certainly a level of fear around adding more year-round, long-term camp kind of sites to parks. So certainly appreciate the answer that this would be very much recreational, short-term stays, and not intended for long-term living. I think that's important, and an important message for the community to hear. But first and foremost, what I have heard is don't turn Paper Mill Dam into a campsite. We don't want to lose Paper Mill Dam. And I want to be extremely clear that none of the conversations that council have had or that staff have had have contemplated losing Paper Mill Dam. Did I say McLean Mill? Okay, thank you. I said Paper Mill Dam. My head said McLean Mill for some reason. But so that has not been a topic of conversation at all. It's not something that's been contemplated. I actually think that the conversation around Paper Mill Dam has been a positive one, in that I've heard from the community how valued Paper Mill Dam is. And I've heard a lot of really good ideas actually on different amenities that people would like to see added to Paper Mill Dam. If we do continue to explore the campsite, I actually think there will be an opportunity for us to add amenities to Paper Mill Dam, so that the whole area is actually enhanced for residents as well as visitors. It is a great little park right now, and obviously it's much loved and well used in the summer, but it is pretty basic. And I think that if we do, improve the area with a campsite, that the amenities that we add could serve both campers as well as residents of our community. So I think we can look at it as very much a positive in that regard, but with, the overall kind of understanding that under no circumstance would this mean closing the beach or the park in general to members of the public. And so from my perspective, I would love to continue to move this forward. I do think that the numbers that have been put in front of us do need a lot more work, and not necessarily work on the high level numbers, but a business case to understand, as Councillor Haggard has said, if there is still going to be a need. I think what we don't want is to spend money to put in a municipal campground and then 100, site campground goes right next door and it's better, then we don't need to put one in. This is something that council was looking at as one way to both enhance tourism operations in the community as well as add non-tax revenue. So if this is going to be something that is not successful because there's not a verified need for it, then we probably want to take a step back. So two things I would like to see. I'm perfectly fine with the part of the motion, I think with the whole motion in general, but the part of the motion that shifts this to as a consideration for budget next year. I think that's important. There's a capital component here that we need to evaluate alongside everything else that council will be asked to evaluate for budget next year. And further, obviously, now that we've got some numbers, I think it's time for more conversations with Sashot and Hupachesit. And lastly, I think that we need to somewhat explore somewhat of a business case, as Councillor Haggard suggested, that speaks less to the operations of the campground and more to the need of our community for additional campsites. I hear anecdotally from people all the time who say that we don't have good RV sites for travelers who are RVing across Vancouver Island. I don't know if that's the greatest need, or tent sites, service RV sites. Like, there's probably, a decent amount of granularity to this that we need to probably get into before we spend money to determine if it's actually going to be viable or not. And that, I think, is what we don't quite have yet. So I would be happy to support the motion with the addition of, further information, or asking staff for further information on the overall need, and as well having discussions with Sashot and Hupachesit. If anyone wants to make a motion, Councillor Mealy, and then go ahead, Councillor Haggard, if you'd like to.
I was going to say, could this be something that we postpone until those two things happen and then have this motion come back?
I think that would be perfectly fine as well. It's council's discretion, however we'd like to move forward. The second part of this motion is directing this to come forward in consideration for budget next year. So that's going to be put off regardless, because it's being put off to budget, which will happen at the end of this year or early next. The first part of the motion, though, is to endorse the Campground Business and Development Plan report. And so maybe that's where we want to first just ask for additional information on overall need analysis.
I agree.
Okay. Councillor Mealy, do you want to try a motion? If not, I'm happy to. If not, okay. So I will move. I will just move that council direct staff to come back with a supplemental report to provide somewhat of an overall needs analysis for the type of camp sites required in the Alberni Valley, and if 30% occupancy is going to be reasonable and viable for the overall project. Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any further comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried, none opposed. And I wonder if we should still refer this to budget. I'm comfortable referring this to budget still, because it's largely the capital ask that needs to be referred. I would imagine that well before we have this report, or well before it comes to budget, we will have this information back. But if council's more comfortable, we could certainly just postpone the rest of the motions until the additional information comes back. Councillor Haggard.
I would like to postpone this motion until we get the additional information.
Would you like to make a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. And just checking with our corporate officer if a motion to postpone is okay, since we haven't actually moved and seconded the motions. And I guess we're just postponing the issue since we haven't read the motions. Think that's acceptable? Thank you. Great. We're all happy with that. Any comments before we vote on this? Okay. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. So that will come, these motions attached to the current report will come forward when the supplemental information comes back to us. In the meantime, council, if you're comfortable with it, myself and our CAO will have an additional conversation at our next meeting with Sashot and Hupachesset, just further on the topic. Okay. Okay, wonderful. Thanks, everyone. We will move on to Councillor Solda's items. The first one is on Airbnbs.
It's not bad, it's only 3, not 5. So regarding B&Bs, I know there's a report coming about short-term rentals and B&Bs, and maybe we can get a report from our Director of Development and Services Deputy CAO. I probably said it all wrong, but from Scott. And because what I'm looking at is we're missing the season. We have a lot of things happening in Port Alberni, and with our hotels, our hotel is not built yet, other hotel. And so with FIFA coming and there's a lot of sports activities happening in Port, we're going to be having a shortage. So how do people go about, what's the process? I know there's a process, they come to the planning and the business license, so I'm going to leave it in Scott's hand to kind of tell us more about it. You're welcome.
Scott.
So staff has previously presented a summary report of our current rules and regulations in our zoning bylaw and business license bylaw, and council provided direction for us to propose some changes to both our business license and zoning bylaw that would add clarification language and have some better alignment with the provincial regulations. We do currently allow bed and breakfasts, and to Councillor Solda's point, you would apply for a business license and they would go through that business license process. An inspection is involved to ensure health and safety, just like we would do for any other business license. So that work, those are changes to the bylaws are in process and will come to a future council meeting. I would want to indicate that currently planning staff is spending the majority of their efforts on moving the OCP forward. So I don't have an exact timeline on when that work was done, but we have done a fair bit of work on that, and that will come forward to a future council for consideration.
And could I just ask a follow-up to that? Because some of the feedback that we've heard in the community is that now that Airbnb requires a business license, now that's prompting people to come forward to the city, I think is obviously what's happened. People have been operating without a business license. Now they're being asked to go under our bed and breakfast business licensing, which I think is very reasonable. However, what we've heard from members of the public is that they're being asked to, basically, I don't know, take out a building permit, but basically show kind of down to the studs that, qualify under new building code. Is that at a very high level what we are actually requiring, or similar to our secondary suite kind of process, are we doing life safety checks to ensure that there's egress in bedroom windows and things like that? And if you don't have all of that information today, that's perfectly fine. But I just want to get a general sense of if somebody comes forward and they have a home that reasonably complies, are we able to offer them a business license?
So without getting into the specific details of particular ones, and that's why I mentioned that there is an inspection involved. So for instance, if there was an operation and they're not meeting, say renovations were done without permits, our inspectors both our building and fire inspector are going to require to try and prove out that if we're issuing a business license, it's safe to do that. Now, the exact requirements is going to be very specific on the circumstances that are being applied for.
Yeah. So I think maybe that is somewhat of like there might be just a somewhat quick information that could be provided to give us that information at least, because if we're doing a safety inspection and there's renovations that have happened without permits and we're not comfortable with that, then I think that's completely reasonable. What we've heard from members of the public, I think, is more in line with if you don't meet building code or we can't prove that you meet building code, then you have to rip everything out and start over. And I would imagine that is not actually how we're applying the policy. But maybe there's some clarification that could be provided at, even just in an email to council, so we have the information, or at a future date. Because I, don't want to put you on the spot too much to know how the policy is being applied by different members of staff. But that's the concern that I think we've heard in the public is, and just recognizing that the information we get is not always representative of, the actual information staff is providing to members of the public.
Certainly, Council. So I believe, and I think we have updated it, and the manager of planning can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have prepared a bit of a handout that is posted and provided for people who are looking into that. And that's something that we can provide to all of council, so you have that information.
That'd be very helpful. Councillor Solda.
So I know we can't make, I would like to see making the process achievable for just ordinary homeowners, but I know we can't override like the building code or the fire code or BC short-term rental legislation, and a lot of people think we can do it all, but I believe we have our rules to follow by, plus our own policies and all that. Is that correct? Am I on the right path? I know, hey, I was doing a little bit of research and I could be totally off.
Well, I guess that I would confirm that council has a lot of authority. Overruling the building code and fire code are not one of them.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate the information on this.
And just one further thing, thank you. It's just that a lot of people don't understand that. They think we can do it all. I wish we could, but I just would like to see it achievable for a lot of people who didn't have to get a business license at one time and now they do. And if they don't, their neighbors are going to go tell on them, I'm told, so.
I just want to be clear that probably they did always have to get a business license. They just didn't. And also that I'm glad we can't override the building code. We shouldn't be able to. We don't have the knowledge to make those decisions.
I believe in safety first.
Councillor Patola, and then I'll go back to Councillor Solda for her next item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On this issue, but just for information of council, last week I attended the BC Economic Development Association conference in Penticton along with Councillor Solda, and one of the sessions I went to was representatives from 3 different business improvement associations, one being Hastings Crossing, which is essentially downtown Eastside Vancouver. And they have recently, with the City of Vancouver, launched a pilot project for temporary occupancy permits in businesses. So this is not with regards to residential or living arrangements whatsoever. But the purpose of the temporary operating permit is a short-term 2-year permit to allow setting up businesses by just meeting or only meeting health and life safety standards. With the proviso that further upgrades will happen within those 2 years or after those 2 years, and the full complement of building code standards will have to be met and fire code standards will have to be met. But it's a pilot program in Vancouver that may have some information and thought in it that might bear on this subject for this council or the next council in future meetings.
Great, very interesting. Scott.
I guess one thing I also want to add is the province introduced these new regulations and required registration to help with some of the housing affordability issues, because a lot of Airbnbs and short-term vacation rentals were taking away permanent rental housing for people. So it's a balance. And so we're attempting to strike that balance as well in amongst the health and safety requirements.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Councillor Solda, washrooms.
Yeah, I just would like an update. I know that's a topic, favorite topic here lately. The washroom, is it going to be open because it's summertime, or have we found the part or whatever we had issues with? Thank you.
Speaking about the Victoria Quay washroom.
So we're still awaiting the completion of that project, and I haven't another update, but I can provide that to council once I get the update from facilities.
Thank you very much.
All right, looking forward to that. The next one is, I'm going to go to across from the street of Little Bavaria. I wasn't here for it, so glad they have 30 days and to try to get it in order. And I'm talking about the burnt-out building. And I'm just wondering about, you drive by, people are starting to use it as a dump, throwing their garbage in there. Is there any way we can avoid that? Because, you know, comes garbage, comes rats and stuff like that, and I'm just kind of worried about the existing businesses and places around there. So, I mean, is there anything we can do? Thank you.
I think the biggest thing we can do is clean it up, because garbage attracts garbage, but I think we're maybe 2 weeks away from that. So Andrew, I'm not sure if you want to comment on anything else that could be done, and then maybe just a brief update on our actual timeline to start the work once our 30 days passes, if you're able to.
So we are going through the process right now to get quotes for the site. So obviously, we have a timeline that we have to follow, and I believe that was June 12th. Yeah. So I think, you know, we'll go through that process and try to do that as quickly as possible to address that issue in the community. And with the garbage, I mean, it's no different than any other property. We would have bylaw go and fine them. If there's any bylaw enforcement that needs to happen, we would follow up and do that. So.
Yeah, okay. I know it's coming soon and I can't wait. I'm doing the countdown, crossing out my calendar, you know, for that 30 days. So, okay, I'll be patient.
Thank you very much. And that is the end of our new business question period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of the committee. For those participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature. Would anybody like to ask questions today? Seeing none, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.